Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy News Beat podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. I used to be a game show host at one time, but I'm here at the Permian Basin International Oil and Gas Show, and I'm here at the Air Compressor Solutions booth. It is just crazy. You can see their old truck back here behind me, and I'll tell you what. This podcast is probably one of the most important that we've talked about in a long time. I've got an old friend here, and I'll tell you what, Cyrus Brooks over at RBAC, and I mean, his dad, I get to interview him tomorrow, and they are a international natural gas evaluation, and they've got software for long-term contracts and everything else. And I've just really enjoyed being able to get and meet Cyrus. Cyrus, welcome from Africa. How are things there?
Oh, they're definitely heating up, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Here it is the springtime heading into the summer. It's really nice and windy in Cape Town, South Africa.
You're in Cape Town.
Yes, I'm in Cape Town, which is in the southeast. It's actually still on the Atlantic, but not far from where the Indian Ocean meets the Atlantic, right near the bottom of the world, you could say.
Now, how long was the flight out there, Cyrus?
Oh, I went from Houston to Atlanta and on to Cape Town. That was 18 hours. So with a 1.5 hours stopover. So it's quite something.
Oh, my goodness. Now, why are you there, Cyrus?
Well, this week is Africa Energy Week. And, their tagline and motto here is to make energy poverty history, which really goes right into, the basic purpose of all energy companies is to supply energy. No matter how much money people want to make and all those things that people think are the real purpose, but actually we really want to supply. I mean, that's our goal, is to supply that energy that people are going to use, we know as long as we do that, we still have a great future supplying that energy. So what the difference is that half of Africa, get this, 1 out of every 2 people don't have electricity.
Say that again.
No electricity.
One
out of every 2 people do not have electricity, access to electricity.
Cyrus, you and I have talked about this, and this is hitting up where my passion is. Everybody needs to be delivered the lowest kilowatt per hour to all citizens of the planet and allow them to eliminate poverty by low-cost, sustainable energy. Now, Cyrus, you and I have also talked about using local natural resources to reduce the impact on the environment. Tell me what's going on and what's the temperature there with everybody, all the leaders that are there.
Well, it's really interesting to hear people from Europe and then hear people from Africa. And there's just a bit of a chasm between the two in some aspects. African leaders are saying very specifically that the resources of Africa should benefit Africans. I mean, Africa has natural gas. Africa has oil, a lot of oil. Africa, could easily do 7 million barrels a day. Africa has, Africa has minerals. Africa has coal. It has, minerals such as cobalt, which, as we know, is essential for EVs, electric vehicles. And it has so much in the way of resources. And, it's not just a supply store. That's the message anyway. This is not just a supply store for everybody else. They have their own needs, and they want if people come and they want to make use of their resources, well, they want to make sure that, the way that contracts are and is that it benefits the people to develop their resources, their economic development as well.
Well, it seems like, and from what I'm seeing from the international side of things, on the international side, that the world, not the World Economic Forum, but the World Bank is loaning money only for renewable projects. And we know that we're seeing a real problem with solar panels after 5 years to 10 years. They're having to be replaced, and then they can't be recycled. And then you need a lot more money for the grid, and it's just a lot higher cost for electricity for even wind or solar. So what are they seeing about getting no money really access? Is money available for natural gas pipelines, for coal plants, for natural gas power plants in Africa?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So investment and foreign investment came up quite a bit at this conference. I'll tell you something interesting. Just on my last point, if I go back to it, the president of Namibia, right, which is next to South Africa, it's the president there. He gave a speech and he said something very smart. He said that the benefits from African resources must benefit Africa. Actually, that's really no different than any local community, saying that, hey, if you want to build something in my backyard, it should benefit me too, or the community, etc. Whether it's transmission or a natural gas pipeline or anything, right?
Right.
So it's not even a big ask. But something else he said was really interesting. He said, we cannot allow, and this goes to what you're saying about finance, we cannot allow climate change to be weaponized. Wow.
What a line.
What is that? Weaponized.
We cannot allow
climate change.
Climate change to be weaponized. Wow. Yeah. I like that.
So yeah, and the point is, you are right. There definitely has been a constraint on finance by the African Development Bank, the IMF or other banks, European Central Bank, like these kind of banks. They have these various commitments toward net zero and emissions and all this kind of thing.
Right.
So there is that there. You could say this, that African leaders are actually quite unhappy with this kind of role. And if you consider, okay, let's take the view that CO2 is a pollutant. Let's just pretend for a moment it's like dumping paint right in the gutter. If you take that view that CO2 is a pollutant, just like dumping paint, you would go to that company and you'd say, hey, you need to clean it up, right? You did that. You have to clean it up. The evidence is right there, and I can see that paint, flowing down the gutter. Go clean it up. Don't talk to me about, and don't complain about my pollution if you're gonna keep doing it. Now that's the other thing is, the Africa has, if you look at CO2 as a pollution, if you do, Africa has contributed something like 3% or 0.3%. Like, it's really minuscule. It's nothing. So you have people, who have basically developed their economies, have been, quote unquote, polluting. They have been polluting, but if you CO2, okay, let's say just they've been emitting CO2 for for 150 years, and then saying, as a banker, I'm not going to lend it to you because that's going to add emissions. It's a little bit unfair because this is also, it's like, hey, you didn't have this, I'm not going to lend it to you for other people, did you? It's not like they weren't lending
Right.
it to the West, early on. And so I think it's pretty fair. They're kind of saying two things that are really interesting. Is that, why doesn't the West clean up their CO2 and and then that will also make room. That's one of the interesting comments they said, clean up 20% of the CO2 you put out there, and that makes room for Africa to develop, that would be one thing. So, the
great point, sir. Let me ask this. I'm sorry. You know me well enough to know that I'm getting excited about a couple of things you just said. So when we talk about China and the Western world, both developed worlds polluting so much, and if CO2 is taken as such a pollution, what about China? China has announced that they are doing. It's over 300 coal plants are already permitted and in the pipeline for production. Unbelievable amount of gigawatts going on for coal. So why can China put all of this coal in? Why can Germany now start taking down wind farms so they can open back up a coal plant? And then we're handicapping Africa and saying you have to go renewable energy, which has to have fossil fuels in order to work.
Yeah.
Are they talking about China?
A good question. Well, it's definitely that. Yeah, actually, definitely all that was mentioned about the coal in China. And frankly, to be honest, I don't blame China. What can you say except they are trying, but this is a weird kind of thing. And when Alex Epstein, who wrote the book, Fossil Future and the Moral Case for Fossil Fuels, Alex Epstein spoke yesterday. And
cool.
He said something quite interesting, which was, he called this very pointedly. He said this is like environmental racism. This is really,
I love that.
The idea. But honestly, the idea that one group of people can basically make coal plant after coal plant after coal plant with practically no protest. Honestly, if the world wanted to protest against China, they could, they
but you wouldn't get any money from the Belt and Road. So,
but people could stop buying things from there. They could, all sorts of things. They could commit sanctions, tariffs. There's all sorts of things that they could do, which they will not do, because they are intertwined economically. They are, they benefit from the relationship from China. And so then why are they so unwilling to be righteous about China? Because it really goes against their own interest, right? And so that therefore it comes across that this resistance towards fossil fuel use in Africa is actually born out of a lot of self-interest.
Well, I had the fortune of interviewing Alex Epstein twice on the podcast, and I really, really enjoyed his passion. And not only interviewing him, Chris Wright from Liberty Oil, Liberty Frac, has also been the humanitarians. And quite honestly, they were my inspiration for trying to take this passion up for being a humanitarian, being energy agnostic, except let's do the lowest impact on the environment. And that means natural gas. And we know that COP28 is coming around the corner, and I'm hearing rumblings. I mean, we have MDS, the Saudi prince going to be there, Cyrus, and there's 140 major world leaders going to be at COP28. And they're now saying that, whoa, natural gas and nuclear are going to be the prince of the ball there in order to do that. And where I'm going with this conversation is, how is the conversation at this energy conference in Africa with nuclear? Is nuclear coming up, and is natural gas coming up as really the bridge to prosperity?
Yes.
Nice.
Natural gas is coming up a lot. It's probably almost 2/3 of the conference is really focused on natural gas.
Nice.
There's a reason for that. The Africa has vast gas resources and potential, and
right.
The world is also calling for Africa's gas for their own use.
Right.
So plus, gas has many more uses than just for, heating and gas-fired power generation. You have
fertilizer.
You have fertilizer. You have, you can make hydrogen, steam reformation. You can do a lot of things. The basis of ethylene and plastics. There's so much you can do with that. You can make a compressed natural gas for cars as a cleaner fuel. And Africa does that, especially in Nigeria, Egypt,
and propane and everything else.
And propane, and so LPG is part of this conference as well.
Nice.
And these things are scalable. You can also have cleaner cooking. And this kind of thing. There's as you said, there's nothing wrong inherently with solar power, wind power, but like anything, they have their own pros and cons. And the peculiarity of electricity is that it's not easily storable, therefore it must be on demand. And as we saw in Texas on Friday with a full lunar eclipse, you saw the solar, because the eclipse was in the middle of the day, and you saw the solar dropped almost immediately to nothing. And it dropped as like a steep cliff. And so
the balancing authority on that, Cyrus, the balancing authority for ERCOT, I'm sure they had to put the brakes on, because they had to spin up natural gas or coal in order to be ready for that. And you nailed it. That the grid cannot have standby wind or standby. I just want to give a shout out to, as I was coming through to my office in Abilene, the wind farm on the left, Cyrus, there's just wind farm after wind farm after wind farm. And then over on the right-hand side, there was one that has been abandoned. There is a wind farm right outside of Abilene, Texas, and the blades are falling off, and they are having some serious problems. And not only is there serious problems with that, the farmers in Germany and farmers in the U.S. are now having to look at 25-year contracts, and these wind companies are backing off their abandoned wells. And so now you may have a ranch with 200 or 300 wind farms sitting out there, and they cannot even use them as a ranch anymore. So That is something that we need to also, when you're talking to the African leaders, the presidents, the general folks there, just like your company is so good about forecasting pricing for natural gas on the global market, we need to take a look at wind farms and then absolutely go, hey, at the end of 25 years, who's going to haul this crap out? And I mean, this is terrible for not only Africa, for Europe, the United States, and nobody's talking about this. And in Texas, by the way, I love me some Texas. They are really focusing and putting money for the abandoned orphan wells because, quite honestly, the oil and gas industry did not do a great job in the past. But over the last 10, 15 years, the great oil and gas companies have done a phenomenal job in ESG and getting things environmentally sound. Where's the renewable market on this? And I really want to hear while you're at that conference, if you can bring that up and try to ask some folks, are there long-term contracts for solar panels? Because Cyrus, solar panels are piling up. We're shipping our solar panels that are no longer usable to other countries and their toxic waste. How is that being discussed at these kind of conferences?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Probably not. I would say that Africa doesn't want that kind of stuff at all.
No.
But I'll tell you something they are interested in.
What's that?
What they are interested in creating a value chain, creating more. So here's what you do, right? If you have a process which, has 5 steps, and the first step is raw material. If you sell the raw material at the first step, then you lose a lot of value add, right? You lose a lot of value add and you only have the jobs that relate to the extraction. So you might have some jobs related to oil or gas extraction or mining, and which is
child abuse in the case of
all the cases of that. But the main point is that what Africans want is Africans actually want to add industry. So let's say you take so let's say you take your minerals and you smelt them and you process them. Well, now you have 2 industries, right? You see what I mean? And so now you're adding jobs and you're adding, now you can, the margin you can sell that material for increases a lot.
Right? Absolutely. And jobs.
And so,
and prosperity.
That's right. And so you start to create jobs, and as you create industry, you also have more money, which also means you can afford more. And eventually, this also means there's a market there for, Europeans and Asians and Americans to sell to, right? And not just, the cheapest phones. They can buy the most expensive everything because they'll have, the standard of living that we have.
Let me bounce this off of you. And I've been thinking about this. And what's wrong if you can go through and as you look at getting more energy and solving that 1 out of 2 people in energy poverty in Africa, what's wrong with looking at charging export money? I think the West should be charged export fees so that we're paying a higher price for the natural resources out of Africa, with that fund going back to Africa to build their infrastructure. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think that that's kind of what they're talking about is structuring the agreements so that it starts to build infrastructure. And they definitely, it's part of the conversation. But it does go back to investment as well.
Right.
You know, and there's a lot of issues in Africa or any place where there is you know, it's a developing economy. So administration, you know, even making these agreements, even experience and knowledge at the, you know, at the levels, at the ministerial levels. If they end up getting advisors, and this came up in the conference, if they end up getting advisors who come from, you know, Europe and the U.S., who have their own agenda, then they're going to start to make agreements towards, maybe they'll start to make agreements towards the, you know, the Paris Accord, or some purpose which the West has, not which is really Africa focused. So I mean, you know, for example, if you take you know, California, and let's just make an example. You take California, and you go to some, you know, depressed area like East LA, or, you know, maybe Watts or South Central, you know, down on Skid Row and all these kind of things. And you're going to tell these guys, well, we're going to help your area. And but we need to make you, but whatever you do, we got to make sure it's green. And you know, they would just look at you like you're crazy. It's like we have no money, we have lots of crime, we have, you know, we have we have, you know, very low literacy. I mean, we have huge problems to overcome, and you want us to care whether or not we emit CO2. And so, you know, I mean, look, it's like, it's not that we can't concern ourselves with climate change. We can't, but you know, when a guy is starving to death, you don't talk to him about CO2. You give him food. You know, I mean, this is what it's, you know. So it's not fair. It's not fair, and not only is it not fair, but really, you know, when you talk to somebody, you should really be asking them what they need. You know, you should, and you shouldn't be telling them what they need. You should be looking and listening.
You know, I think one of the best things that came out of that thing were everything that we've talked about, Cyrus, is phenomenal. And I couldn't be more happy that you're there helping your company, and then helping out, bring back the word. We got to spread the word on helping them out, because selfishly, it will help out everybody else in the global market. And that's exactly what RB does. You know, your company really does look at the global environment, and the fiscally responsibility of elevating folks out. And I absolutely love the way that Alex Epstein phrased that it is energy racism, by putting that out there that way, that we're not allowing them freedom through fiscal restrictions. And so I'm excited about that. And tomorrow you have hooked us up with Dr. Ibram, and he is the general director of APPO, and I can't wait to visit with him.
Yes, he's this is the African Petroleum Producers Organization. So he's really high level. You know, this guy is a firebrand talker. I mean, he's a really, you know, he's a real strong advocate for Africa, and for African knowledge, African learning, you know, technology transfer. So, and also developing African training, and training centers throughout Africa, and also Pan-African cooperation, so that all Africans can you know, rise up. Oh,
fantastic! I'll tell you, I am so excited about this. And so, Cyrus, how can everybody get a hold of you and your company? And we want to make sure that people can get a hold of you. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, go to RBAC.com. So, you know, that would be, I guess, what do we say? We say Romeo, Bravo, Alpha, Charlie.
I think that works. .com.
Yes.
I think that's fabulous. And I want to give you a shout out. I didn't mean to cut you off, Cyrus, but you're one of a great thought leader out there. Your whole team over there does a great job with articles, knowledge, and not only am I a stalker of you guys in a nice way. I watch, so I just want to think that you guys are a phenomenal resource for folks being industry thought leaders. So we got about 2 more minutes. What is any last words or thoughts for you on this trip that you're doing in Africa?
Well, I would say that something really interesting has come, which is that natural gas is going to be a key to the future.
Nice.
You know, whether you call it a low carbon future or whatever you call it, it's a lot is going to be powered by natural gas. It is cleaner. It is going to make cities cleaner, and it's, you know, cooking more available, electricity more available to all the people of Earth. And
right.
RBAC helps companies to make better energy decisions so that it actually benefits everybody in the long run.
Isn't that great? Hey, one last question here before we close out. I was visiting with Tucker. He was over at the propane council for the United States, and he may be there, Tucker Perkins, and he's describing propane and compressed natural gas as the last mile. And in Africa, that would absolutely be a great way to get, as you mentioned earlier, people using it. So natural gas and then staging it out for the last mile. It'd be kind of fun to hear what people's thoughts are in incorporating those kinds of contracts in there as well, because the infrastructure is a lot easier to put in for tanks and those kind of things as opposed to a pipeline. You can go further with that.
You know, you scale it. They did this in Mexico. You scale it, right? And you know, people have the connections in their house so that finally when the pipelines come, you can put them right in because the house it's already there, you see.
You bet.
So it's a very good way to make a scalable micro economy. I mean, we could go off on that one, but yeah, I agree with you. I'm totally with you on that.
Sounds fantastic, Cyrus. Thank you from Africa, and I'm here in the Permian. And shout out to our sponsors here with Air Compressor Solutions. And hey, I look forward to visiting with you tomorrow there, Cyrus.
Sounds good. Okay, talk to you then.